Hello and welcome back to another episode of Hawaiian Share Projects. Today we're going to be back in the forge, and I'm going to be working on a project that's not so much for the beginners. This is more for those of you that have gotten the basics kind of figured out on tapering, drawing out, and so on and so forth. And that is, we are going to be attempting to make a hunting knife. Now this is going to be my first try at this, so I will be doing this at a 3/16 by 1.5 inch mild steel. That way I can learn how to do the profile of the knife as well as the bevels. And so if you want to see how that's done, stick around. So to start things off, I'm going to be doing this at a mild steel, like I said. This here is a piece of 1.5 inch by 3/16 inch bar stock. Picked it up at my local hardware store. I kind of figured with this being kind of my first attempt at a hunting knife, my second knife in general, I should probably do it with the cheaper material that I'm not messing up any good 1080 or 1095 steel. That's kind of expensive and hard to come by where I'm at. But one of the key things I've realized while doing this project is while I'm trying to draw out and make the profile of the blade, when I'm hammering, I want to make sure that the bar is as vertical as possible. It's a 90-degree angle compared to the anvil. That way I'm not rolling it over. And then I'll pull it over onto its sides, kind of hammer out what little bit did roll over and keep everything nice and flat. But for the most part, I'm just going to try and taper it out into a point and kind of get the general shape that I'm wanting for my blade. So this is taking quite a few heats. And again, trying to prevent it from rolling over on itself. If it starts to roll over on you, just lay it flat and then pound that out nice and flat again. And then go right back into doing your taper. Now working on this, I did kind of realize that my slot jaw tongs were a godsend. So if you don't have a set of these yet, go ahead and make yourself or pick yourself up some. They're completely fantastic and helped out quite a bit when holding the blade for this part of the project. Now when I got to drawing out the tang got fairly thinner. It didn't work quite as well, so I ended up having to use my scrolling tongs. But when doing the actual profile of the blade, my slot jaw tongs were fantastic. Absolutely loved them. So with that, I'm thinking about in a later video going ahead and going over how to make slot jaw tongs. So if you guys want to see that, make sure you leave a comment down below and hit that like button. Now, if you noticed it, I did get this heat a little bit too hot and I ended up burning the material a little bit. Just a little hole right there. Not that big of a deal, especially with it being mild steel on a practice blade. But this is the reason why I'm using the mild steel to do this practice. I'm very happy that I end up having this mistake and something I should watch for later on. And I found that while using the cheap material compared to using something more expensive like 1080, 1095. Now I'm going to go into and start working on the bevel and say, seen a lot of videos of people doing this, and a lot of people just grind their bevels. I kind of think that I want to try out hammering my bevels in, give it a little bit more strength. And so I'm just going to use the edge of my anvil and line up the edge of the blade with it and kind of go at a slight angle in my strikes to create that slope in the blade. The actual bevel that is going to be the point or the edge of the blade where I'm eventually going to go in and sharpen it. And fairly simple to do. Just make sure you use multiple sections of your anvil, get around it however you need to, or whatever it is that you're hammering on, whether it be a railroad track or something else. There's always a way to move around and get into a better position to do different types of hammer blows. And while I'm doing this, I'm also trying to make sure that I do an equal number of hammer strikes on each side of the blade to try and keep that bevel as center as possible. Now I'm going to try to make a little bit of a inlet. It doesn't turn out too well with my little die that I have up here. I mean, it is mild steel that I'm trying to use to make the indent, and so it just didn't work too well. Let's go ahead and get that out of the way, and we'll just use the anvil to do it. Came over to the side of the anvil, gave it a couple whacks. It started the little indent or the offset, and that is going to be my starting point for my tang. It's also going to leave somewhat of a nice little groove in there for my finger. That way I'm making sure I'm not cutting myself when I do decide to go ahead and use the blade. While I continue to work on getting that initial offset started and straighten things up a little bit, I'd like to say thank you guys. I really appreciate you for checking out my channel and sticking with me. Thank you to my subscribers. You guys are fantastic. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet and you're really liking the content, or even just liking it a little bit, go ahead and hit that subscription button and that notification bell. That way you know when I got a new video coming out. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them down below. And if you're liking this video, go ahead and hit that like button. And seems how it's Thanksgiving and all, I want to say thank you guys very much. That's something that I'm very thankful for, is all of you out there watching my videos. Now here's the part where we're actually going to start to draw out the tang. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did with making the profile of the blade. I want to keep it as vertical as possible, striking down onto it, make sure it's at a high temp. That way I'm actually stretching the metal out and drawing it into the shape and size that I want. And I want to try to make sure to keep it as even as possible. That way there's less grinding for me later on. And here we go with a little bit of drop forging. I do drop it quite a few times. This is where having better tongs will come in handy, so I will be making videos, like I said, as to making more tongs. These are my scrolling tongs, and they held okay, just wasn't the tightest hold that I wanted. And I'm just going to keep working that tang until it's about the size that I want. I left it just slightly over an inch. I feel like that is pretty decent size. And it's about 5 inches in length, roughly. And there we go, dropping it one more time for you guys. And I just want it to be even the entire length of the tang. Again, that helps to where I don't have to do as much grinding later on. I did have it roll over a little bit, so I'm going to have to work a little bit on straightening it out and flattening it. But that's no big deal, just another heat and it's ready to go. Now that we got the main profile taken care of, as well as the tang, it's on over to the belt sander we go. This is my Harbor Freight belt sander. It works pretty darn well. I'm very happy with it. I'm just going to even out and make the profile a little bit more smooth, as well as I'm going to start flattening the steel, because my hammer blows weren't completely consistent, and I did notice that there's some high spots in the flat side of my blade, and I just want to make sure that with using the sander, that everything is nice and flat and even and looking good. Right here is also where you guys are going to start to, when you sharpen your blade, you'll finish grinding in your bevels. And if you didn't do it at the hammer, this right here would be the good spot to actually do your grinding of that. I did find a little trick that came in very handy, and that was I put some magnets on the blade. That way I wasn't burning up my fingers from the blade getting nice and hot on the sander. Now I'd like to say thank you guys one more time, and as we're heading up to it, happy Thanksgiving. I hope all of you stay safe and eat a lot of good food. If you like the video, go ahead and hit that like button, but for now, stay classy, party on.